Welcome to Raise the Bar, elevated conversations around entrepreneurship, capital raising, and real estate. I'm your host, Seth Bradley. At some point, every high achiever hits it. Whether you're a W-2 or an entrepreneur, or you're building something big, you've done the work. And by every external measure, you're winning. Maybe you've won. And then comes this quiet, nagging question. Is this it? I'm not talking about burnout, I'm not talking about failure, but just a pull towards something more. Like, what are you missing? Something that actually uses everything you've built, everything you've learned, everything you've earned, and turns it into work that matters on a different level. It makes real impact across many people. Well, today's conversation is about that transition and how to make it without losing your mind, your momentum, or your income. All right, let's get it. What's up, builders? This is Raise the Bar Radio, where we talk about building wealth, raising capital, and all in all, raising the bar in your business and your life. This is the No BS podcast for capital raisers, investors, and entrepreneurs who are serious about scaling their business and living life on their own terms. I'm Seth Bradley, securities attorney, real estate investor, and entrepreneur, bringing you world-class strategies from the best in the game. If you're ready to raise more capital, close bigger deals, build a better you, and create true financial freedom, you're in the right place. Let's go. Perfect. Today on Raise the Bar, we've got Mitch Matthews, keynote speaker, executive coach, best-selling author, and the host of the top-ranked Dream, Think, Do podcast, where he's interviewed Olympic athletes, New York Times bestsellers, and Fortune 500 executives on how they've designed lives they actually love. Mitch is the creator of the Authority Bridge, a coaching process that helps high achievers turn their hard-won experience into profitable, purpose-driven coaching and speaking brands. He's been endorsed by Brendon Burchard, featured across major media, and has been helping coaches and speakers and entrepreneurs build meaningful businesses since 2006. Mitch, welcome to the show, brother.
Seth, I appreciate it, man. I'm excited to be here. Love what you're doing.
Absolutely, man. Love your content, love your podcast. So I'm a big fan over here. So really excited to have you on the show, man. Well, let's get it going, man. Lots of folks out there that are typical W-2s, you know, this is pretty easy for them to answer, but folks like us, it gets a little tougher. But when a stranger asks you on the street what you do, what do you say?
Well, when I want to try to keep it short, I say that I'm a CEO of a training organization. But one of my favorite business cards is it has my name, it has a dot on one side, and you turn it over as a dot on the other side. And I love to use that in actually in actual networking opportunities, because people will look at the card and oftentimes if they see a title, they'll just assume they know what that means, or if they see a company name, they'll just assume. But when they see this card and they see a dot on one side, they see a dot on the other side, and they'll ask, like, what do you do? It's like, oh, I help people connect dots. And that actually sparks a real conversation, because then, if I say I'm a CEO of a training company, or if I say I'm a coach, or if I say I'm a speaker, people just assume, oh, I know what that is. But when I say I help people connect dots, they ask a lot of questions. So that's one of my favorite ways to answer that question.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, man. And you're right. People make assumptions, right? Like if I come out and I just say attorney, people make assumptions. Right. They assume I'm in a courtroom, litigating, things like that. Or if I say, hey, I'm in real estate, they assume I'm a real estate agent. That's usually where people's minds go. So I love what you did there with connecting the dots, man. So what does that actually mean? Tell us what that means.
Well, what I appreciated about it is it's a great conversation starter, but it is accurate to what I do. So you mentioned, I'm a success coach. So I've been coaching executives, founders, entrepreneurs, leaders since 2002. And people ask me all the time, you're a life coach, or are you a business coach? It's like, well, yes, but best defined, I'm a success coach. And the way that works is I help people define what does success mean to them, and then design a life and a career that helps them to achieve that. Because I think a lot of times people are actually shooting at targets they didn't decide on, right? But when it comes to success, boy, to ask yourself, what does that actually mean to me? What does that actually mean in this season of my life, in this season of my career? I love digging into that with people. And that often then is connecting the dots, because what we'll do is we'll often take an inventory of your past. I always say we take a brilliance inventory too, because you mentioned the authority bridge. That's a major focus for us right now. And what we're doing is we're actually helping executives, leaders, people who have got a ton of brilliance in them, and they're doing well in what they currently do. I don't want to have them burn down their current life and destroy everything, but oftentimes they've got brilliance in them that would really help others in different ways. It could help people outside their organization. It could help, the world in a positive way, but they should also get paid for that brilliance, and by bringing that brilliance and delivering that brilliance in different ways. So we help them establish coaching and consulting and speaking businesses where they can add that to what they're currently doing. And for some people, that really adds a sense of satisfaction. It gives them an enhanced sense of impact, which is very true, to be able to continue to do what you do, but then to go help an individual, either through coaching or consulting, or to be able to help a large group of 500 or 1,000, be able to share that, that brilliance that you have. But when I'm working with people one-on-one and we get that clarity of what success looks like, a part of that is to inventory the brilliance that's gotten you to the point you're currently in. And I always say you're swimming around in brilliance just like a fish swims around in water, right? The fish doesn't fully know or understand that it's swimming in water. It just does it. And we do that same thing with our brilliance. The stuff that we do day to day is really easy to assume everybody knows it. And so then we can disregard it or downgrade it. But to swim around and actually inventory the brilliance that's gotten you to where you are today, that brilliance is something that might seem simple to you or might seem common to you. I can tell you it's revolutionary for the right person. And that person's also often willing to pay you very much for that brilliance.
What are some of the conclusions you come to, because you've done this hundreds of times at this point, that people come to whenever you start defining what success looks like for them? Because I'm just thinking about myself, and I set these goals every year. I think most high achievers get that part of it, right? Let's set goals. Right. Let's visualize what we want this year, 3 years, 5 years to look like. But I think the question mark is like, why, right?
Exactly.
Like this year, I've set a goal of hitting $5 million in revenue with my law firm, but it's like, but why 5 million? I don't know if I have an answer to that, right? So I think that's maybe part of what you're trying to dig down into.
Well, it's absolutely it. And it's one of those things that if we don't define success, it will be defined for us, either accidentally or by default. A lot of people are operating kind of on somebody else's definition of success, whether it's their parent or a mentor or something a college professor said to them. They're just operating on somebody else's definition, and that won't serve you. And what's also interesting is that tends to be fleeting. I'll give you an example. I was working with an entrepreneur recently, and he had landed on kind of one of his big goals was to have $10 million in annual revenue with his small business. And what's really interesting is that was his goal, right? We hadn't defined success, but that was his goal. But what's interesting is in the very year where he hit that for the first time was also the same year that his good friend sold his business for $1.5 billion. So at the very time my client hit 10 million, that wildly important goal for him, of one of his friends hit 1.5 billion. Mm-hmm. Now you can imagine that all of a sudden made that goal seem really small, kind of insignificant, almost sad, especially when his friend was now navigating, what do I do with $1.5 billion, right? Which, as you well know, brings a set of challenges that's kind of unique, but very real. And so what we had to do was we had to go back and say, okay, answer that why question that you were just saying, but to be able to say, all right, what does success as a whole look like? So 10 million could definitely be a part of that. That's one of those tangibles. That's one of those measurables. But when you think about, and that's what we went to for him, is to be able to say, hey, when you think about success in your business, one of the measurables could be $10 million, but what does success mean? And we started to think about, like, I want a culture where everybody feels like they are at their best. I want people to play to win, not be scared to lose. And he had a number of different experiences. Part of the brilliance that he swam in was he had a lot of different experiences and different cultures, some of which he'd been a victim to, some of which he'd helped to change, all of those things. And we realized, like, part of his definition of success was creating that culture, right? So the measurable of $10 million is still valuable, but as he would hit that, to look around and go, oh my gosh, look at this culture. Like, people are fighting to work for us, right? They're also doing things in their industry that have never been done. He said, all right, so a part of my definition of success is to truly innovate, to truly create something that really hasn't been done before. Maybe even to do something that somebody thought was impossible. Like, that was a part of his success. But also, and in equal parts, to say, all right, outside of your business, what does success look like? What is your relationship? He was married and still is married. To be able to say, what's your relationship? What do you want that relationship to look like? And we started to define what that success looked like. And it was also wildly important to him, but it was definitely not something that was going to happen by accident. And unless he was careful, his success goal with his career and his business could easily outweigh and take over the success with his wife and his relationship. They were working on having kids. And so all of this inventory of what success, this clarity of what success looked like, was so wildly important for him. Then what we got to do is start to design a life and systems to help support that definition of success. So then he could move forward, and we did expand. He wanted to go past 10 million since he'd already achieved that, but he really did understand the why of what he was doing, so that if somebody else had a big breakthrough, it wouldn't diminish his success.
Right. Yeah, it's tough not to look around and see what friends or colleagues or competitors are doing, and especially nowadays where you can see all of that happening in real time on social media and in the news and
you at least see a version of it, right? Like, exactly, it's that thing of as you well know, with the back end of so many different businesses, I'm sure that you get to see, the front end often looks great. Back end, not so much, so it's that thing of, we tend to see that front end version, which looks clean and ordered and all of that. So yeah, when you get clear on your own version of success, you tend to be less captivated with what other people are either saying is their success or saying what their life is.
That's right. I mean, I know, like, I'm in the weeds just building companies, and you're trying to get the next seed round raise, the Series A, or these things that are just really, really, really difficult to do. And then around you look on Yahoo News or wherever, and you just see people like, oh, we just funded, $50 billion raise. And it's like, what? It's like,
right.
We're trying to raise a few $1 million. And it's just insane, but it's like, you only see what people put out there. You only see the big success stories, or sometimes the big failures, but you see, like, basically all the way to the left and all the way to the right, and you don't see all the stuff in the middle.
Right. Absolutely. And that is it. What's interesting, especially in, our era, is we get exposed to so many other people's lives, or at least vantage points on so many different people's lives. I think about, when I was growing up, or my parents, they got a newspaper in the morning, right? They might watch the evening news at 6:00, right? And that was kind of their vantage point on the world. It was the people that they worked with in their daily lives and their different worlds and businesses. And that morning paper, that evening news. We now, as everybody that's listening knows, we get exposed to so many different vantage points. And it really is, I think it's probably more important now than ever to really get clear on what your version of success looks like, because we can get so caught up, at least in the perceived success of others, and that's exhausting. It's trying, it's all of those things, but to be able to go, now this is what I'm shooting for, this is my target, that allows you to stay a lot more focused and have a lot more fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's keep going here. So once you've kind of defined success with one of your clients, what's the next step here? Like we've kind of honed it into what success looks like for this particular person, and we're trying not to look around. This is like what we want. What happens next?
Yeah, absolutely. So my podcast is called Dream, Think, Do. And, it's 3-word title. I hope it's snappy. I hope it's sticky. I hope people remember it, right? It's fun, but it's also a process. And so that's exactly what we do. So it's a 3-step phase or a 3-step process. So phase 1 is that dreaming component, to be able to say, hey, this is what success looks like for me. And I always want that vision to be something that stretches somebody, to be able to go, man, I think this is possible, but I'm not entirely sure how we can do it, but I want to go after it. And I always say it's really important to reserve time to do that for yourself and with yourself before we move into the thinking step, which is the strategy step. It's the, putting a plan together, all of those things, right? And I really do think that that's wildly important, because what's interesting is that, a lot of my coaching clients are executives, entrepreneurs, leaders, and they've worked this visioning and or strategy muscle really, really well for their business. But it's interesting, I will often ask an executive, even a founder, like, hey, what are some of your goals? Like when you want to define what does success look like, what might that be? They can list off the objectives for their organization. They can list off, what are their team's goals for this quarter, for this year, all those things. And I'll say, hey, that's great. It's good that you know that. It's amazing you have it memorized, all those things. But let's talk about for you. And it's interesting. It's almost like going from, biking to running. It's a similar muscle group, but it's a little bit different, right? And if you've ever ridden, a bike all the time and then decide, hey, I'm going to pick up running as well, you feel it when you initially do that. And so getting that clarity for yourself is a really important step. And it feels similar to what you do in your business, but it's different. And it's certainly not common, right? And so to be able to say, hey, that's where it starts. But then to be able to say, all right, when we think about that dream, think, do process, the moving into thinking is to be able to say, all right, let's start to put a plan together to design that life, what that might be. And what I encourage people to think like a scientist when it comes to this, especially where, again, with the folks that I coach, the people that you work with, they're probably amazing at implementing strategy at work. But when we're also starting to implement things for yourself, maybe it's a side business, maybe it's a new venture, or to be able to say, hey, what about relationships? What about the rest of my life? What is it about, trying something new as a hobby or as a jobby, right? Whatever that might be. So I always say, think like a scientist. And I don't know about you, but I was not a great student. So, my senior year of college, I took a class called science. Because like not like biology, not like it was just the most basic science class to get me to check that off my list, right? So not a great student, but I love science now. And one of the core things that I appreciate about science is the scientific method. And it's, I think, probably the best way for us to actually walk out a plan. Because if you're a scientist, you walk into the lab, you decide what you want to prove or disprove. The first thing you do is you build a hypothesis. And what I love about hypothesis, the word hypothesis, is if you go to the dictionary today and look up the word hypothesis, it's either a best guess or a well-educated guess at whether something's true or not, right? So I like that as a definition for a plan. Because I don't know about you, but I'm kind of like, I am a recovering perfectionist. I love to plan, but man, I can get caught up in all of the details and, that kind of that striving for perfection, all those things. And what I love about the scientific method is it reminds us to say, hey, put a hypothesis together, but then move into experimenting. Like, try it out. And so that's what I do with a lot of my people, is to say, all right, if this is truly now our clearly defined target, what's the thing we want to try this week to move towards achieving that? What are some experiments that we want to try? I had a couple of coaching sessions this morning before this call. And, part of it was one of the executives I was working with was just actually finding some time, getting some time back, because he's realized he has a lot of success, but he's been experiencing something we call bored out, not burnout, but bored out. And bored out is something that a lot of high achievers experience, in that you do the same things over and over again. It's the very things that allow you to have that success, but they actually start to become less satisfying. Nobody else knows it. You're still hitting your numbers. You're still doing your thing, but you start to get bored with those very things that have brought you that success. And you have to be careful with it, because if somebody continues to be bored out, they feel a lot of the same symptoms of burnout, fatigue, frustration, lack of satisfaction. But if we don't do that, then you start to create problems for yourself, right? You start, and we've all seen it happen where people just kind of self-implode because they were bored out. And what's beautiful about, if you're bored out, the solution for being bored out is injecting just a little bit of novelty, just trying something a little bit new. And so for the executive I was working with this morning, he realized he wants to inject some new into his life, but as you well know, what it's like is a lot of times in his case, high-level executive, got a couple of different people planning each day for him, meetings that he can either attend, not attend, didn't have a lot of control over his day-to-day because of his role. And so what we realized is we're going to start small and to start taking some of his day back. And we realized, one of the few places that he still had control over his life was his commute. Because, during the day, people were vying for his time. During the night, his family was vying for his time. So we realized in any given day, the one time that he really had control of, his total control over, was his 15-minute commute to work and back. So we just started to get really intentional with that 15 minutes. And what's beautiful about it started with not necessarily listening to podcasts or symphonies for him. He's like, I'm taking that 15 minutes back with 80s rock, right? Like, so he's got his commute playlist that is totally his time. But that's where we start. You start small and you start those little experiments to test them out, to then try new things. And again, in this case, inject a little novelty and a little bit of ownership. And as people do that, as they start to have those small wins, they start to rack up those wins, and it can start to play out into the rest of the day and the rest of their lives. And so it's finding those little experiments to start walking them out intentionally, and to follow up with that scientific method. It's then evaluating and adjusting to be able to say, all right, what worked, what didn't? What do I need to do differently? What do we need to adapt? And so that's our dream, think, do method, is to be able to say, we've got to dream, we got to think, and then we got to do. And that's the experimenting part. That's where you're going and you're trying these things, you're working these things. And it's a messy, imperfect process, but that's where it can lead to the gold.
Pardon the interruption, but we don't do ads. Instead, know that if you're raising capital for real estate, my law firm, Raise Law, is here to give you the expert legal guidance you need to raise capital compliantly and structure and close your deal. And if you're looking for a done-for-you fund-to-fund solution, TribeVest is the industry's only all-in-one setup and fund administration solution. Visit raise.law and tribevest.com to learn more. Yeah, I love that, man. I mean, that's where progress happens. It just makes me think of the lean startup method, right? Build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn. Take action. You don't want to, with your saying, you don't want to think too long. Like, you want to think.
Right, exactly. Get that minimum viable product out there. Like, get people getting their hands on there. You think you know what they want, but as you start to do it, boy, you're going to find so many things you never even thought of. That's exactly right.
Right. I love the term bored out too, man. That's great. But I'll say that, usually when you get bored out, it's because you probably got pretty good at whatever you're doing. And you're right though. You need some novelty. You need to keep things interesting. You need growth. Growth is always interesting, right? So if you can figure out a way to keep growing and you're not just stagnated wherever you're at, then that growth will keep things novel and interesting as well, so that you're not as bored. I hear Hormozy talk about that stuff all the time. Get
That's
bored,
exactly right.
do the boring thing over and over and over again, because that's how you get really good at something.
Absolutely. And that's one of the other benefits that we've been talking with and experiencing with the Authority Bridge is, as we've been, helping these executives and founders, entrepreneurs to start speaking and coaching on the side. What's really interesting is one great way to inject some novelty is to start turning around to teach. Because as you well know, as you start to teach something in a way that actually moves people, that actually moves the needle on a room, whether it's 2 people, 20 people, or 2,000 people, you can know something, but to know at a level where you can communicate it and transfer that understanding, to make it sticky, to actually change a room, to change an environment, to change a culture, boy, that's a whole new challenge, right? So it's taking something and applying a new challenge to it. And I know for the people that I work with, the idea that it's actually bringing impact is really satisfying. But I know for me, like I'm a rabid capitalist, right? So the whole thing of more impact, but also more income, that's just like, that's the best, right? Is to be able to say, oh gosh, and you should be paid for that. But being able to turn around and teach something at a level that really moves the room, that's a great way to inject some novelty and some new life into that thing that you do and do well.
For sure. Let's jump into that. Let's jump into Authority Bridge and what that looks like. I think some people have a love-hate relationship with it. I personally love, right? I love self-education and YouTube University and spending money on courses, masterminds, coaching, all that stuff. There's so much of it out there, though. Some of it's not very good, right? And some stuff you get into it and you're like, oh, this guy actually doesn't know what he's talking about. This guy's actually just a really good marketer. So you've got to watch yourself. I mean, what do you say to your potential clients when they push back and they're like, oh, I don't want to be like this guru. I don't want to be looked at in that. I don't want to be that salesy, corny person out there. What does that conversation look like?
Absolutely. And I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with our industry, right? Because there are some amazing thinkers out there putting out concepts that really do change a life, change a company, change the world, all of that. And then you got some of those folks that are like Maseratis and mansions by Friday, that kind of thing. And it's like, you're going to have that within any industry. What we find is with Authority Bridge, we tend to attract the people that really do want to have impact, but are also willing to make income as they do it. And one of the things I always encourage people on is I think a lot of people are like, if I'm going to do that, I do need to start from scratch. I need to burn everything down, my current life and start all over. And my encouragement on that is to be able to say, we walk them through this Authority Bridge process, and part of the authority is to actually inventory your brilliance and then to have mechanisms to put out that brilliance in a way where you're bringing value, where you don't actually even promote that you're coaching or speaking or consulting yet. We just basically, you start to teach from your journey, and we start to then build out, as you're doing that, we start to build out the foundation of your business. And what's really interesting is that what you're doing is what we call value-based promotion, where you're actually putting out value as opposed to saying, oh, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm brilliant, right? I don't know about you, but I don't want to train up influencers. I want to train up people that are having impact. And that's what we do. But, interestingly enough, I just got an update from one of our Authority Bridge clients that a successful engineer, she's an incredible, wildly successful engineer within her organization, but she was feeling that itch to have more impact, and she just wanted to start, reaching beyond her organization, and she knew she had something to offer. And so we started this process with the Authority Bridge of value-based content, where basically it's we have a system for it, but it's you're putting out one piece of content each week that speaks to that person you want to have impact with, not from a, hey, hire me, but hey, here's something I'm learning right now. Let me know how it goes, right? And what's beautiful about something like that is you're putting out value, you're building your authority by testing all of all these concepts out, right? And all of that. And what's interesting is as she started to do that, she made no mention that she was launching a coaching and speaking business. She was starting to build the foundation of it, but just starting to put out that authority, growing that authority with no big announcements, no big promotion. Now, what's interesting is within her engineering firm, people started to see it. And she didn't go viral. These posts weren't getting millions of clicks and things like that. But she was noticing, like even some of her posts on LinkedIn, they might, couple of likes. Then she started getting to 15 likes, 25 likes, all those things. But people within her organization started to notice to the point where there was a board seat that got vacated. And people started to pull her aside to say, hey, these things that you're teaching, the things that you're putting out there, people are starting to see you in a different light. You should put your hat in or put your go ahead and, say, hey, I'd like that to be able to be considered for that board role. And that was something she had never, ever thought about. And is definitely nothing anyone within her organization had ever brought up or suggested. But because she'd been putting out these posts and really bringing value and teaching from some of her brilliance, and she just sent me an email this morning that she got that board position, which is a huge boost to her income, but it's also, an injection of novelty because it also represents some new challenges that she's really excited to face. And what's amazing about that is that came because she did the process. She just started to put out value in a way that truly could help people and make a difference for the people she felt called to help. And so that's the beauty of this, is that you don't have to burn down your life. It allows you to actually build up and continue to build something of your own without starting from scratch.
How else can that journey look? You've kind of demonstrated one particular client, started making posts about her journey and what she's doing and putting herself out there. Tell us what kind of that typical success journey looks like for some of your clients.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've had somebody else that he was a VP of sales for an growing organization that was getting ready for be able to take their company public. And what was interesting is that his pushback was, I feel called to it. I'm getting asked to speak at conferences. I love speaking, but I don't feel like I have time for it. And it was true. His schedule was jammed. Lots going on. Getting ready for this IPO, all this kind of stuff, right? And what's beautiful is we just said, hey, 15 to 20 minutes a day, working on this, and it's that injection of novelty, but being able to start to put out value, but also build a business. And what we were able to do was allow him to actually have the process for being able to take these opportunities to speak, at conferences, all those things, to actually turn those into places where he could make more impact. But he was, going from speaking for free to getting paid $5,000 or $10,000, or recently got $15,000. And, he's like, geez, a year ago, I would have been just happy if somebody paid my travel. But what's interesting about that is, when he went from being kind of a volunteer or voluntold to speak at a conference to now being a paid speaker, he's like, it's interesting because he's like, not only am I getting paid, but I'm also getting treated differently. And I'm noticing that people are paying more attention when they pay $10,000 for something. They actually, they set you up in the agenda more effectively. They introduce you, more clearly and more, give you more credibility, all those things. And he said, so what's interesting is that he's making more impact when he's showing up in these spaces, but he's also making and generating revenue from it. And what's also beautiful is that for him, he's speaking, but then he's very good at coaching. But I was like, hey, listen, you don't have a lot of time. And, what bars did you want to go to in college? It was the bars with the lines. So I said, just let people know you only do one, take on one new coaching client a month. That's it. So you can charge a premium. So his first coaching client, he charged $20,000, right? He thought initially, he's like, he was mentoring people left and right. But what's interesting is when people were not paying for it, they often didn't do anything with it. But his first coaching client, he was able to charge $20,000, and they have shown up hungry. They have applied and engaged and, taken massive action. He's like, this is the ultimate in the upside down understanding of what he was giving away for free wasn't having as much impact. But now, as he's figured out a way to inject this into his busy lifestyle, he's having more impact. It's generating good revenue, and it's also giving him something that he's excited about as he's building and helping this company to grow, but now he's building something of his own. And so the IPO went off, was very successful. He's done very well for himself, but now he knows, as he continues to walk this out, he can work for this company as long as he wants to. And it's still a great, great relationship, and it's going well, but he knows he's also building something that he can step out to full time whenever, and, however he wants to do that. And I don't know about you, but that feels like freedom. When you've got something you can choose to step out to, that also tends to make that day job, for a lot of people, it's a lot more satisfying that they know I'm choosing to be here, not because I have to be here, but because I want to be here. And I've got something I can step out to whenever I want to. But I'll do that on my terms, not on anybody else's terms. And that's truly freedom.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Let's connect that full circle to the dream, think, do, right? How does growing this platform for your clients as a coach, as a speaker, how does that connect with their dream, think, do? Going through that exercise with them, is this would be giving them the freedom to step away? Is this success for them? Is just giving them that freedom typically, or what does that look like?
Well, that's
make
that the
connection.
Beauty of it, Seth, is that it's defining what success is, and then how do these things fit in. So a number of my success clients don't do the authority bridge. Yeah. But a number of them do, especially if we decide that, hey, a part of their version of success is building something of their own. Or one of my clients currently is a PhD. She's a professor. She's an academic. She's an administrator at the university she works for. And we started to work together, and the authority bridge was a great fit for her. And part of that was she knew she wanted to build something of her own. She's also a really dynamic speaker, and so it just made sense. But a part of her definition of success was she has two kids, one's 7 and one's 8. And she wanted her kids, she's like, my kids are of an age now where they're watching me. And she's like, I can tell them all day long to dream big and to pursue those dreams. But she's like, part of her definition of success was to show her kids that she's doing that. And so now for her, success also looks like growing out her own business, like having a successful career, but growing out her own business. Her kids have a front row seat for that. And that is a huge part of her definition of success. Now, is doing well monetarily, but then her kids are watching her mom make decisions on her own to be able to say, hey, I'm making this marketing decision. She said that's a normal course of action for, dinners at night with the family, is to be able to say, hey, I'm working on this decision, or I'm making this move in my business, and they talk about it, and her kids are actually interested and engaged with it. So she's like, I know I'm raising my kids to be weird, but I'm doing it, they're going to be weird in all the right ways. So that's a part of her definition of success that might be different than somebody else's. But that's a huge motivator for her. Not just the impact, not just the income, but the example to her kids.
Full circle there. Full circle. Yep. Mitch, you're obviously an incredible entrepreneur and coach. You can tell just from this short conversation, but in a parallel universe, tell me about a different version of you.
I love this question. I love that you asked that. And I've been thinking about it. It's interesting. I'd love to say, I enjoy like mountaineering and mountain climbing. And I'd love to be a guide for people that are afraid of heights. Because that's me, right? Like I had to overcome tremendous fear of heights. But I think, I don't know if this is actually something that exists, but if you pressed me, I think I'd be a contrarian historian. I just I get really interested in kind of different things. I love to see, perspectives and to be able to look at an issue maybe from multiple perspectives. But this started at a young age for me. I got interested in American history. And then for some reason in high school, we were talking about the American Revolution. And, I love the American Revolution, such an incredible story, which I think we're losing touch with. But, just digging into that. But at one point I got hit with this thought, I wonder how they teach this in England.
Yeah.
Right. And so I found a way. My parents were supportive. And so my first year in college, I did it in England. And I took a course on American history. As it turns out, I took that from an anti-American socialist. But I found out very quickly that their version of the American Revolution, which they call the American Uprising, is very different than what I learned.
Sure
so
it is.
Was it true? Yes. But it was basically the same stories I knew told from a different perspective. And that was hugely eye-opening for me. Yeah. And I wound up having drag out fights with this professor. We just went at it. And boy, she wasn't afraid to cut. She wasn't afraid to go for the jugular on these debates. And I'll never forget, one of the greatest gifts was I was about a month and a half out from heading back home. And we were a day off of probably our worst fight. She had made some blanket statement about state employees in the United States. And my dad worked for the state in the state of Iowa. And so, boy, I wasn't letting that stand. And we fought it out and all these things. But about a day and a half later, I wound up being in a hallway, wound up walking by her office. Her door was open. She saw me. I think my vein was, I get that vein where when I'm really ticked that pops out. It was probably still popped out, right? I was still that frustrated, but she saw me and she's like, come in. And I wound up sitting down and she's like, hey, have I ever told you about my story with the United States? And I was like, no, I mean, I know your opinions about the United States. She's like, well, I grew up loving the United States. In fact, that was what my degree was in. But my first job out of university, was I went and taught at a private boys' school in the Northeast of the United States. And she said for 3 years, I was treated horribly by those students and their parents. And she's like, I just came home not liking, in fact, hating the United States. And I'm like, you know what? I get that. I get that. And so we wound up having this great conversation. And it's funny because we still would get into these debates, right? But we would actually start laughing. My classmates noticed the change. What is going on? You guys are actually, you're fighting it out, but you're laughing and you're poking at each other. You're having fun. I'm like, well, it's just because I got to know her, right? She actually came to my going away party that was held at a pub, all this kind of stuff, right? And I just learned that everybody's got a different perspective. There can be absolute truths that seem diametrically opposed, but those truths can be dependent on perspective. But I've just always kind of been fascinated with, trying to understand what I can understand from my perspective, but also try to look at many as perspectives as possible. And, as you can imagine, as you do that, you get offended, you get frustrated and all that, but you also start to see there's a lot more humanity in every issue. So, yeah, contrarian historian. I don't think I'd make much money at it, but I think that would be something that would be fascinating.
Yes, that's really interesting, right? Because the winners of the wars are the ones that write the history. So
That's exactly right.
You're only going to get one perspective, and all that other history, that whole other point of view, is lost for the most part, or it's 100%. Really difficult to find. It's really difficult for you to find the other side of the American Revolution, right? Really difficult to find the loser's story, we'll call it.
Exactly.
I love that term, but the loser story.
Yeah.
Right? They probably had a really good argument. They probably had really good reasoning.
Oh.
But you're only hearing the worst of it, right? You're only hearing the worst reason for what the other side was vying for. You don't hear the good reasons. And you can see that playing out even today. I don't want to get into politics, but you hear one side. If you're on one side, you hear from one side. If you're on the other side, you only hear the other side. You don't hear the good stuff about the other side, right? So you're only getting one perspective.
Yep. And that's the beautiful thing about that is that, IRL can be your focus in any of this, is that in real life, to actually go and have real conversations with real people, not just the stuff you see in your feed, not just the stuff, that you see on TV or whatever, but to be able to go, wait, all right, who's somebody that I know that might in fact believe this? Something that might be, diametrically opposed to what you believe in, but like go and have a real conversation. Man, it's a huge gift. It's not always going to work out, but boy, it just leads to a lot more richness in your life.
Absolutely. Mitch, this has been awesome, brother. Where can our listeners find out more about you?
I love it, Seth. You're a great interviewer, man. I appreciate it. The easiest place to go is to mitchmatthews.com. But we did put a gift together for your crew because we knew you guys probably want to go deeper, go further, all of those things. So we have a workshop that we charge $97 for, but we want to make it free for your crew. So it's called Making Time for Your Next Chapter. And that's, for leaders, achievers, people who really do want to have more impact, maybe make more income as well. As usually the first thing is they don't have extra time to do that. And so we've got this workshop that we put together. People can go to mitchmatthews.com/time to be able to get it. You'll get access to it, but use the coupon code Seth and it will get it to you for free. And it's something that's really helped people, whether they want to find out more about the Authority Bridge and what we're doing there or not. It's something that's gets some real tangible tools to help you to find just that little bit of time to inject some novelty, to learn some new things, inject something new into your life. And we wanted to get that to your crew for free. So mitchmatthews.com/time and use the coupon code Seth to get it for free.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate that. We'll be sure to drop that in the show notes. Mitch, it's been awesome having you on, man. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks so much.
All right, builders, that's a wrap on today's episode with my man, Mitch Matthews. If this conversation hit you where you live, if you're in that quiet pull towards something more and needed someone to name it and show you the path forward, that's exactly the kind of conversation we're here to have. Well, do me a favor, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening. That's how we keep attracting guests like Mitch and delivering conversations that actually raise the bar. Check the show notes to connect with Mitch, find Dream Think Do podcast, and learn more about the Authority Bridge at mitchmatthews.com. If you're raising capital or launching a fund or syndication, I built something for you. It's called the Fund Founders Playbook, and it's free. This is the actual strategy framework behind hundreds of funds built and billions in closed deals. The legal structure, the capital raising strategy, the compliance blueprint, all of it. It's yours for free. Go get it at SethBradleyESQ.com. And as always, enjoy the journey and raise the bar. Thanks for tuning in to Raise the Bar Radio. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Keep pushing, keep building, and keep raising the bar. Until next time, enjoy the journey.